Good afternoon. How are you all? It is beautiful here in Iowa this afternoon as I prepare to give this book talk on Up Close, Ronald Reagan. Now, the two main characters in this book include Ronald Reagan himself, naturally, and Nancy Reagan, his main supporter and wife. While there are many other characters involved in the book, I prefer to show the two main ones. Ronald Reagan himself, of course, since the book is about him, and Nancy Reagan, since she was Ronald Reagan's wife and main supporter, as I previously stated. Now, I chose to read this book because I find Ronald Reagan to be a fascinating man. Just think of the things he's done for our country. He lowered taxes during his 8 years in office. He brought down the Berlin Wall. He even ended the Cold War. How did he end the Cold War, you may ask? By creating a stronger military of the United States. We literally made our military bigger than the Russians, to the point where they could no longer keep up. Thankfully to this man right here, the Cold War came to a close with a continuous record of being cold. Now also, I like to talk about Ronald Reagan because I consider him to be a true conservative. A conservative Republican, that is. By that I mean, he grew up in a very liberal, democratic family. But, as time progressed, he realized the importance of capitalism and going out and earning money by yourself, for yourself, and not having to worry about giving that money to the government. Thankfully, Ronald Reagan was able to become a conservative, and because of this, he was able to go on to do much greater things. Not only did he become the governor of California, but he served 2 terms as the President of the United States. And while his continuous acting career, earlier in his life, made him a great speaker, that wasn't the only thing that Americans voted on. They voted on issues such as taxes and militarization. Americans wanted nothing more than the Cold War to be over. Now, Ronald Reagan is a personal hero of mine, which is another reason I chose Ronald Reagan as my leadership project, as well as this book to read. He's a personal hero of mine because he instills patriotism beyond belief. As an American, he truly loves this country. He would do anything for it, and he shows that in many of his speeches and announcements to our nation. If you ever get a chance to watch any of his speeches on YouTube, do. You will be truly mesmerized at how this man feels about our country. Now, of course, I would recommend this book to others. Of course, if you're already a Republican, then you probably know quite a bit about Ronald Reagan, or you have an idea of who he was. If anything, I would love to get my Democratic friends to read this book. In reading this book, I hope that they might take a better view toward politics, and maybe someday considering possibly doing what Ronald Reagan himself did, switched parties, and became a true and honest conservative that helped to benefit America instead of hinder her. I can definitely say that I can use this book to incorporate a broader reach of information into my leadership project. the part I specifically like about this book is that the man who wrote it originally started out as a very young Republican from a very young age. He was born and raised during the Reagan era. Living in those years, he writes about how he felt more patriotic because of Ronald Reagan. Reagan made him feel patriotic, made him feel like he loved the country, and his friends and family were the same way. Reagan made them love their country. But over time, the author notes that he became democratic. Now, for whatever reason that might be, he still saw Ronald Reagan in the same light later on. As he made that transition to being a Democrat, though, he began to wonder why he ever truly respected Ronald Reagan, because the issues that were more prominent and important to Ronald Reagan were not issues that were more prominent or important to the author. Yet, over time, the author did regain his respect for Reagan. Becoming an independent, he was able to give a full, unbiased report of how he felt about Ronald Reagan. And I can certainly say that in this unbiased book, you will definitely find many positive things about this man, Ronald Reagan. Let me say that again. Ronald Reagan. Yes, I just love the sound of that. Now, one of my favorite quotes in reading this book is the ending. Not necessarily the ending, but after Reagan had won election into the presidency, I believe it was his first term into office, very early on, in the early 80s. Reagan was almost assassinated, coming out of a hotel in Washington, D.C. Now, he was shot very, very close to his heart, and it could have easily killed him, but it didn't. Upon arriving at the hospital, the barely conscious Reagan made sure to check with all of the hospital staff, including his surgeons, most importantly his surgeons, to make sure that they were Republicans, because he certainly didn't want Democrats who might want to sabotage the presidency working on him and his fragile body. The quote that many of those surgeons came back with, that I still today laugh about, is, "Mr. President, we're all Republicans today." Now, to me, that just shows the wealth of respect that everyone had for this man, be they a Democrat or Republican. They truly showed that they respected him. It didn't matter party lines. They respected what he stood for. They respected how he stood. And as a result, he survived to continue on for many more years, 2 full terms as President of the United States. Had Reagan not survived, perhaps the Berlin Wall would have never been torn down. Perhaps the Cold War would not have come to an end. Perhaps taxes would never have been lowered, allowing businesses to grow as they did. A lot of things happened during the Reagan era. Many do not realize this. They look at Reagan as just another Republican president. Yet he was the game changer. Reagan was the Republican who broke in to many years of Democratic rule in the presidency. Before him, nearly all presidents were Democrats, going back all the way to the turn of the century. 20th century, that is. Now, keep in mind that as Reagan progressed into his presidency, many people still didn't like him, hence the assassination attempts. But many Americans did like him. His speeches made people feel more American, and love their country more. In the end, I see that as being a definite positive thing. When any president can make you love your country, then really, what complaining about this man, or any president, is there to be done? Thank you. I hope you will consider reading my book. Up Close. Political star Ronald Reagan. Man, I just love saying that. This has been Matthew Volker with your book report. And remember, stay conservative.